Shalom, I'm Rabbi Stephen Sachs. In 1973, a teenage girl was preparing for her bat mitzvah. She approached the rabbi of her synagogue, Shlomo Riskin, who was then the rabbi of the Lincoln Square Synagogue. She asked him if she could read from the Haftorah. Rabbi Riskin thought about it and responded, no, it would be impermissible under Jewish law for a woman to read from the Haftorah. However, he created a women's tefillah group where this teenage girl, this bat mitzvah girl, was able to read from the book of Ruth. Who was this girl? This girl was Elena Kagan, who has just been nominated to the U.S. Supreme Court. In a recent interview, Riskin explains that Kagan was never fully satisfied with her bat mitzvah experience. She had wanted to read from the Haftorah, just like the boys. When we hear a story like this, what's our gut reaction? What do we think of Rabbi Riskin? We say, he's a sexist. He lets the boys do it, but not the girls do it. Well, maybe he appears to be a sexist, but let's stop and judge Rabbi Riskin within the context in which he operates in. Let's remember that Rabbi Riskin is an Orthodox rabbi who is bound by halacha. And as we know, halacha makes distinctions between the roles of men and women. In fact, if anything, Rabbi Riskin has championed the inclusion of women into more public ritual, being a leader in developing women's prayer groups. As long as he could do it within the bounds of halacha, Rabbi Riskin has been willing to increase the role of women in ritual. Far from being a sexist, he's the opposite. He's willing to buck the system to create new opportunities for women. Let's learn a lesson from this. When we judge people, when we judge institutions, judge them within the context in which they operate. I'll give you another good example from this week's Parsha. We come across the Sotah test. What's the Sotah test? If a woman is accused of adultery, she could vindicate herself how? By coming to the temple, standing before the Kohen, the priest. The priest then gives her a cup of water, writes God's name on a piece of parchment, sticks it into the cup of water, and she drinks it. If she is guilty of adultery, we are told her stomach will explode and she dies. But if she is innocent, then God will give her a new child as a reward. Now, when we look at this, what do we say? We say this is bizarre, it's sexist, it's hokey. Who would come up with such a thing? But if we look at it within the context of its time, the Sotah test is not sexist, it's not bizarre, it's not hokey. Rather, it is a feminist idea, revolutionary in nature. For the first time, a woman had a way of proving her innocence when being accused of adultery. Remember, judge people within the context in which they operate. That applies to us nowadays as well. We've had a lot of bar and bat mitzvahs here recently. And the kids do a wonderful job reading from the Torah, the Haftorah, Musaf, Shachrit. They do it all. Boys in the main service, girls in the women's tefillah group. But perhaps your kid is getting ready for a bar bat mitzvah and has a learning disability. Is it realistic to expect him or her to read the Torah, read the Haftorah, and lead Shachrit and Musaf? Maybe, depending on the nature of the disability, or maybe not. It may just not be practical to expect him or her in another language to do all of those things. So let me ask you, does it really mar your son or daughter's accomplishment if they only read the Torah or only read the Haftarah, or only lead Musaf, or only lead Shachrit, or lead Shachrit and read the Haftarah, if they don't do it all, they only do what they can? No, of course not. If you judge them within the context in which they operate, take into account that they are having to compensate for a disability, then you appreciate just how hard they're working and how extraordinary their accomplishment is. This goes for all aspects of life. When we meet people, when we judge people, when we judge religions, when we judge institutions, whatever it may be, judge them within the context in which they operate. We will learn to appreciate them more.